You noticed it. That tiny moment when something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way they talked about their ex. Everyone I dated before you was crazy. You laughed. Maybe it was the way they disappeared for 12 hours, then came back with a perfect excuse. You accepted it. Maybe it was something so small you barely even registered it. A joke that felt a little cruel. A lie that didn't technically matter. The way they treated a waiter. The way they reacted when you said no. You noticed. For about half a second. Then your brain did something incredibly efficient. It explained it away. They're probably stressed. They didn't mean it. That's just how they communicate. Everyone has flaws. And then you kept going. 3 months later, you're emotionally attached. 6 months later, you're defending them to your friends. A year later, you're sitting alone somewhere, replaying the beginning of the relationship in your head. And the thought finally arrives. The one that hurts the most. I saw it. I literally saw the red flag. So why didn't I leave? Here's the uncomfortable answer. You didn't necessarily ignore the warning because you were stupid. You ignored it because your brain is incredibly good at making someone you want to trust look trustworthy. And that ability is ancient, much older than dating apps, older than cities, older than marriage, older than civilization itself. Your brain was built in a world where choosing the wrong person could have consequences far more serious than getting ghosted. Imagine you're living thousands of years ago. There's no Tinder, no dating profile, no relationship podcast telling you to watch for narcissistic behavior. You meet someone, and eventually you have to decide. Do you trust this person? Do you stay near them? Do you let them into your group? Do you depend on them? Because back then, relationships weren't just about romance. They were survival decisions. The wrong person could steal resources, start conflict, abandon you, endanger your children, or simply refuse to help when winter came. So you'd think evolution would have given you a perfect internal alarm system. Something screaming, danger, walk away. But evolution had a problem. It couldn't make you perfectly cautious, because being suspicious of everyone was dangerous too. Imagine rejecting every stranger, every potential ally, every potential partner, every person who seemed slightly strange. You'd be safe, and completely alone. So evolution made a compromise. A strange one. Your brain learned to tolerate uncertainty, to overlook small problems, to give people another chance, to prioritize connection. Because sometimes, the person you're worried about really is harmless. And sometimes, the person you almost rejected is the person who saves you. That trade-off worked incredibly well for your ancestors. But there's a problem. The world changed. Your brain didn't. The threats became invisible. The decisions became emotional. And now your ancient survival software is being used to evaluate something your ancestors could never have imagined. A person who leaves you on red. A partner who suddenly becomes cold. Someone who makes you feel anxious, then makes you feel amazing again. And that's where this gets much darker. Because sometimes the very system designed to keep you connected can make you stay connected to the wrong person. And your brain has several tricks for making sure you don't notice. The first one is so powerful, you probably use it every single day. The first trick is simple. Once you like someone, your brain starts protecting the decision to like them. Psychologists call one part of this confirmation bias. You don't look at a person objectively anymore. You look for evidence that supports the story you've already chosen. They're thoughtful, you notice it. They're funny, you remember it. They make you feel special. Your brain stores that moment like evidence. But then they lie. Your brain doesn't say, this person lies. It says, maybe there was a reason. That's the difference. Your brain isn't asking, what's true? It's asking, how can I make these facts fit together? And the more emotionally invested you become, the harder it gets to admit you were wrong. Because admitting they're bad for you doesn't just mean losing them. It means admitting you misjudged them. And your brain hates that, so you start editing reality. The disrespect becomes a bad day. The jealousy becomes proof they care. The controlling behavior becomes protectiveness. The disappearing becomes they're busy. The apology becomes proof they're changing. And suddenly, the red flag isn't a warning anymore. It's a puzzle you're trying to explain. But there's another bias working underneath it. Optimism bias. You naturally believe bad things are more likely to happen to other people than to you. Your friend says, something feels off about him. You immediately see it. You can list 10 reasons they should leave. But when it's you, You become a defense attorney. It's complicated. They've had a difficult past. They're not always like this. They'll change. Your friend gets the objective version of your brain. You get the emotionally invested version, and then comes the most dangerous part: sunk cost. You've already spent months, maybe years, you've invested time, energy, trust, memories, you introduced them to your family, you changed your routine, maybe you moved cities. Leaving now feels like admitting all of it was wasted. So your brain makes a terrible calculation. Instead of asking, is this person good for me? It asks, have I invested too much to leave? That's how people stay. Not because the relationship keeps getting better, but because leaving gets more painful. And then something even stranger happens. You finally get the behavior you wanted. After weeks of distance, they suddenly become affectionate. They send the perfect message. They apologize. They bring flowers. They become the person you remember from the beginning, and your brain lights up. For a moment, everything feels right again. That relief is powerful, almost too powerful, because now you're not just attached to the person. You're attached to the possibility of getting that version of them back. And that leads to one of the most dangerous psychological traps in human behavior: a reward that appears only sometimes. And this is where ignoring the red flag becomes addictive, not metaphorically. Intermittent reinforcement can make unpredictable rewards incredibly powerful. Think about a slot machine. You don't win every time. That's what keeps you pulling the lever. Sometimes you lose, then suddenly you win. Your brain remembers the reward, and you try again. Relationships can create the same pattern. They ignore you. Then suddenly, I miss you. They hurt you, then become incredibly affectionate. They disappear, then return like nothing happened. And now you're not asking, is this person good for me? You're asking, how do I get the good version of them back? That's the trap. You're no longer attached only to the person. You're attached to the possibility that tomorrow they'll become the person you met in the beginning, and that possibility can keep you trapped much longer than reality ever could. But there's another problem. Red flags aren't always dramatic. Sometimes the biggest one is what happens when you say no. Set a boundary. Watch their reaction. Disagree with them. Watch their reaction. Make a mistake. Watch their reaction. You don't really learn who someone is when everything is going perfectly. You learn who they are when they don't get what they want. And your brain will often try to avoid that information, because once you're attached, you don't want evidence. You want reassurance. So here's how you fight your own wiring. First, decide your deal breakers before you fall for someone. Write down 3, not 20. 3 things you absolutely won't tolerate. Then, when emotions get loud, look at the list. Second, use the friend test. Tell someone you trust the entire story, not the flattering version, not the version where you conveniently leave out the worst part. Everything. Then ask, what would you do? Because your friend isn't emotionally invested in making your relationship work, you are. That's why they can sometimes see what you can't. And finally, stop judging people by their best moments. Anyone can be charming when they want something. Watch what happens when they're angry, when they're disappointed, when you say no, when they have nothing to gain. That's where the real person starts showing through. Because your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what evolution trained it to do. It wants connection. It wants belonging. It wants to believe the person you chose is the right person. And sometimes that instinct protects you, but sometimes it makes you explain away the exact warning you needed to hear. So the goal isn't to become paranoid. It's not to assume everyone is dangerous. It's simpler than that. Trust your feelings enough to investigate them. You don't have to leave the moment you see a red flag, but don't bury it either. Pause. Look closer. Watch the pattern. Because one strange moment might mean nothing. A pattern is information, and sometimes the sentence that saves you isn't, I knew they were bad. It's, I knew something felt wrong, and this time I listened. Your brain will keep trying to protect the story you want to believe. So build a system that protects you instead. And if this video made you think of a red flag you've been explaining away, don't worry. You don't have to tell me what it was. Just don't ignore it twice. Subscribe for more psychological stories that expose the strange things your own brain does behind your back. Because your mind has been hiding things from you for thousands of years. We're just getting started.